What's going on, everyone? I'm Zach, your host of the Aux podcast. And today I apologize first if I sound a little bit nasally. I'm feeling a bit under the weather, but today I wanted to get into Taylor Swift's acceptance speech and some of my thoughts on her Billboard Women of the Decade acceptance speech award, which I just want to start off by saying I think Taylor Swift is an absolute beast. I am coming into this podcast monologue as a fan of Taylor Swift. I have listened to Taylor Swift since I was 15, 16 years old. I went to an all-guys high school, and my morning bus rides were filled with some Taylor Swift. While I was trying to appear manly on the outside, I had Fearless and Our Song playing on my headphones while I'm on the bus with a bunch of guys. And I know a lot of other guys that like Taylor Swift too, so just know that I'm coming into this monologue as a fan of her work. So just a little bit of background on Taylor Swift. She has 20 top 10 hits, nearly $700 million grossed in US tours alone. And yeah, she's just been an absolute beast this decade. She got into the music industry when she was 15. She's 30 now. That flew by. And she recently won the Women of the Decade award at the Billboard award show. And she gave about a 15-minute acceptance speech, which I will link in the description of this podcast. So first off, or second off, I should say, she got into this game very young, which means she received an immense amount of criticism. And I understand that she has pushbacks against these criticisms, that at times it could seem ungrateful, that she's always focusing on the criticisms that people throw towards her. And I've never been in that situation. I probably never will be, where billions of people around the world are aware of who I am. And I'm constantly getting bombarded with all the things that are wrong about me. On the other hand, she did sign up for this. It is her job. It has been her career. And so part of being in the spotlight, especially at the level of someone like Taylor Swift, it is part of your job description to combat that shit and figure out a way to get through it. So one of the things that she started off with in the acceptance speech, this was probably about 3 minutes in, she says, quote, "This is what happens to a woman in music if she achieves success or power beyond people's comfort level." And she's talking about the pushback or the criticisms that people have for women, especially in the music industry. I understand that women get a lot of criticism in the music industry. There are also a lot of men that get a lot of pushback in the music industry as well. For example, someone like Kanye West is constantly told that you should just stick to music, get off Twitter, stop getting into politics. You know, he's been called basically an Uncle Tom, a house slave for his support of Donald Trump. All of these things that he continues to try to push outside of music. People will push back at him and say, you need to stick to music, stay in your lane. And so there are males in the music industry that get that. Even Ed Sheeran, in terms of some of the physical pushback and criticism. You know, I have heard people say that, you know, Ed Sheeran's lucky he can sing, because other than that, he's not a handsome guy. He's ugly, essentially, which I'm against ad hominem insults. Whether or not you think that's true, I don't think he's an ugly guy. I think red-haired dudes get a bad rap, but that has been something that's been said about Ed Sheeran. And there are a bunch of other examples about males in the music industry that do get pushback, like women, like Taylor Swift in the music industry. I think for her, it's also heightened just because she is a megastar. She is huge. She is Justin Bieber level, maybe even beyond that at this point, because Justin Bieber's been out of the spotlight for a little bit. She also talks about being pitchy and people saying, you know, am I pitchy? Is her voice, is she actually a good singer? You know, does she work with songwriters that are making her great? She talks about maybe the label is her reason for success, and she goes on to say no. Again, I think you're a singer. That's your job. You're going to receive criticisms online from people on Twitter that you don't even know who they are. They might just be doing it just to purely piss you off and get a reaction and say your voice is pitchy or write articles about how you aren't really a good singer. I think that also is part of the thing that goes with a job description for either males or females. On a different note, songwriters are great. Songwriters help a lot of artists in the industry. It, it it's a they feed off of each other. Songwriters get into a room with artists. Songwriters make songs on their own and then they pitch them to artists. It doesn't show badly on an artist that they use a songwriter. Almost every artist that I've spoken to many music artists on my full length podcast, and almost everyone has worked with songwriters, or maybe someone started out as a songwriter and then they release music on their own name. But I think for a lot of people outside the music industry, they assume that an artist writes everything on their by themselves, or they do all the production by themselves, and they don't know that songwriters are a huge part of the music industry. It's not like I don't think music artists are trying to hide the fact that they use songwriters. It's a widely accepted thing in the industry that you'll get into a room with songwriters. They will work with you to create a song based around the vision of the artist, and they get paid to do that. And there are a lot of wonderful songwriters on the music industry. So I didn't really like the fact that she pointed out, like, oh, people think songwriters are the reason for her success. If she uses songwriters and producers, which she does, they are part of the reason for her success. It's not just her pumping out these songs by herself in her room. She might have created the foundation and the layout of the song, but she is working with producers and songwriters to create this vision. There's another thing she said. She said, have you ever heard someone say about a male artist, I really like his songs, there's just something about him I don't like? Yes. To the answer to her question, she answers it no, but yes, I have. There all the time, people will say things about male artists, whether it's music industry or, acting, writing. I really like this guy, but there's something that I don't like about him. Again, going back to the Kanye West example, I've heard so many people say, he makes great music, but he really needs to get out of politics, or he sounds dumb as shit on Twitter. He's an Uncle Tom. These things do get thrown around to males in the music industry just as well as females, coming from the fact, using her example, saying, I like this music, but I don't like something about this as a person. That is not restricted to just a female aspect of the music industry, something that only female artists have to deal with. She also uses the word us a lot in her speech, and I'm not inside her head, but when she uses us, I feel like she thinks she's speaking for all of the women in the music industry and maybe women as a whole. There are a lot of people in the music industry and women as a whole that don't share Taylor Swift's point of view, that don't agree with what she's saying. They might understand what she's saying, but they don't necessarily agree with what she's saying. So I try to shy away from this. I try not to speak for other people. Like in this podcast, this is purely just my takeaways on her acceptance speech. So when she uses us, there are a lot of people in the music industry, specifically women, that don't share the same sentiments and point of view as Taylor Swift. They think very differently. They make different choices. Being a woman is not an ideology. I'm more interested in the choices that you make as someone who happens to be a woman. It doesn't mean that just because you are a woman in music, you feel this way. You can disagree with Taylor Swift in the music industry. I think she's such a big star that maybe people are afraid to come out and say, I don't really agree with what Taylor Swift is experiencing, or maybe I don't agree, but I understand. But that hasn't been my experience in the music industry. I think her stardom may keep a lot of women from coming out and speaking on that because they're afraid of what backlash they might get from Taylor Swift, from her and her entourage, because she is very powerful. What I did like about her speech is that although she didn't really give props to any of the producers or songwriters or her manager, the things that or like the family that she uses to make music. She did at least say that there are a lot of great women making music nowadays, which there are: Lizzo, Billie Eilish, Camila Cabello, Dua Lipa, Halsey, just a few that she mentioned. There are a shit ton of great women making music. And I think as a whole in society, the equality of opportunity is being leveled to a point where it's leaking over into the entertainment industry, the music industry, where women are having more of an opportunity to get involved and reach the heights that Taylor Swift has. So I did like that she pointed that out. She also said, quote, "We are held at sometimes a higher, sometimes an impossible standard." And she was talking about being a woman in music, being a woman in the entertainment industry. She didn't define that standard, so I don't know what standard she's talking about. I'm also not in the music industry, so I don't know if that's true. I would love to have a conversation with a woman or a few women in the music industry who are willing to have an honest conversation about the Hollywood entertainment world, because it is its own just separate part of society in many ways. The common person doesn't have to deal with the politics of the entertainment industry. It's a very small, tightly packed group of people, and people get cast out for having different opinions and, maybe stereotypes or typecast, things like that. So while it is difficult to spread something in society, in terms of like the common person point of view, like someone that works at Trader Joe's or at a law firm doesn't have to worry about getting blacklisted from every single grocery store or law firm in the country because they speak out. But if you speak out against the political landscape of Hollywood, you can get blacklisted from a large part of the music and entertainment industry. That is something that happens. People that have differing point of views that fit outside of the Overton window of Hollywood have more difficult times getting jobs and getting work. So I can't speak to that. I would love to talk to someone who's on the inside of the entertainment industry about that topic and how Hollywood operates in that sense. She does advocate for more women in the recording studios, which I like, the songwriting rooms and on stage. And she talks about the streaming world. She says, quote, "I've spoken out in the past about revenue flow for creators, songwriters, producers who are being left behind due to these rapid shifts and changes. I still don't think record contracts or producers agreements have fully caught up." I agree with this. There's a lot of things that need to be handled in the music industry, especially in the streaming age, with the disorganization of how songwriters, producers, and artists get paid. And many would say that they don't get paid enough. That a lot of the revenue is going to the record label and not to the songwriters, producers, and the artists, the people that are actually in the room making the music themselves. And there have been a lot of steps forward with especially the Music Modernization Act and trying to bring a structure into how artists get paid and getting paid more closely to what they deserve. So I do like that she brought up that issue of streaming. She also mentioned the Scooter Braun deal with private equity firms coming in and buying up music rights. Scooter Braun is the manager of Justin Bieber, and he came in with a private equity group and bought the rights to her music catalog, or a lot of her music catalog. I haven't went through all the details on that, and I don't know the ins and outs of contract law, so I'm just not gonna to comment on that. I don't know how Scooter operated within that deal, whether he's to blame or Taylor's to blame, or both. There was just a breakdown of communication. I don't know enough about the Scooter Braun Taylor Swift incident to comment. She ended off with saying that social media has changed over the past decade. Artists can build a following and reach fans more easily, which is true. You had to be recognized by a record label back in the day and get signed for you to have a chance of millions of people hearing your music. Now you can upload directly to Spotify, SoundCloud, and get millions of streams organically without a label, backing you, which is a great thing to have. You can have that accessibility of not having to be signed to a huge label for people to hear your voice as a new artist, which is great. So just overall, I'll start with some of the more negative things from the the acceptance speech to kind of wrap up. And I'm just thinking, if I was in her position, if I got recognized as man of the decade in music, I would have such a grateful tone. The first thing I'll be doing is recognizing everyone that was a part of this journey, everyone that helped me get to the position that I'm at, anyone who had a part of it. Just kind of, I would want to make a point that I'm lucky to be in this position, that there are a lot of people that are struggling out there, and no matter what problems I have, there are billions of other people on the planet that would trade places with me. And I wasn't inside Taylor's head, obviously, but she didn't sound super grateful. She didn't feel really grateful for the award. She might have said it at the end, but I didn't really feel like she was like, oh my God, I am so fucking lucky to be standing on this stage right now. Which, I mean, she is. Part of it is luck. A lot of it is hard work and skill, but part of it is luck. And she didn't really make gratefulness a part of her acceptance speech. And the other thing was what I mentioned before, the songwriters, directors, mentors, producers that have been involved. She kind of she like separated herself from those people. Whether she likes it or not, those people are a huge part of the reason why she is in the position she's in right now. I don't know what percentage of responsibility they have, but I'm sure it's pretty significant. She works with the top producers, top songwriters, top music video directors, top publicists, top managers. She has all these people in her life that she didn't really give props to at any point in the speech. And so while I'm not going to say I have a problem with that, because I'm not the one receiving the award. If I had been in her position, I would have made a point to put the spotlight on those people. And I think that goes back to gratefulness too. So those are my thoughts on Taylor Swift's acceptance speech. I want to kind of bring it full circle and say I'm a huge fan of Taylor Swift's music. I think she's super talented, all the way from her early, Fearless days to the more recent Blank Space, New York vibes. I've always thought that she was very talented, and even though she gets a lot of criticism and backlash, I think she is a great music artist, and she makes great music, and I enjoy listening to it. So thank you for listening to that rant on Taylor Swift, and I will see you guys next time.